This is Rich Szerman. It's just after 10 o'clock on Friday morning, so it's time for the Real Estate Fix on your local hometown station, KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Got a lot of good stuff for you guys today. We're going to have a good show. We got some fun stuff to talk about. First things first, we're going to have a little market update, and we're going to get into the bad bank of the week. There's no shortage to people who seem to be vying for that position. But yeah, the bad bank of the week. We're going to talk about PHH this week. We have a special guest. Sam's on the line with us. Sam Chong from the Mortgage Hub, friend of the show, sponsor of the show, and the best lender I know. We're going to talk a little bit about an update for what we did last week with the show we did last week, talking about some special programs that are zeroed down. So Sam's going to help us out with some of that. But first, of course, a disclaimer: I am not an attorney, and I do not give legal advice. I hold a California real estate license, and I have over 30 years of experience. The opinions I express and the advice I give is strictly my own. I would encourage anyone who has real estate issues to also check with the relevant experts like attorneys, accountants, etc. Well, whatever your real estate problem is, we can fix it, or I can find you the experts who can. So feel free to give us a call. You can call on the station here at 661-298-5487, or what's much more likely, since nobody ever seems to want to call it live, what's much more likely is get a hold of me at thefixwithrich@gmail.com. Again, that email address is thefixwithrich, no spaces, thefixwithrich@gmail.com. Say it one more time, thefixwithrich@gmail.com. Or if all else fails, or if you just want to talk to me on the phone, you can do that too. I give out my personal cell phone number all the time. You can reach me at 661-714-1400. Just please don't call in between 10 and 11 on Friday mornings because I'm otherwise occupied. Although you can text. I will call you back as soon as I get out of the show. We often get stuff. So let's get into a market update. Let's start there. A little bit of not so much good, not so much bad, just kind of average news from last week. The interest rate did relax a bit because loan applications are up 8%, so that tells the interest rate to stay down a little bit, which is nice. But that's still 33% lower than it was this time last year. So, and the refi market is all but dead because the interest rate has gone up, as we've talked about, nearly 2 points in the last year. So not a lot of good news, but not a lot of bad news. The little bit of good news we have is that the inevitable decline that will come with the next interest rate increase has slowed. So there's a nice little ray of sunshine that we've been talking about for the last month, and it'll probably continue for the next month. So we'll probably have about 30, maybe 60, maybe even 90 days of this. And the result is housing prices have taken a slight uptick because inventories are still low. There's not a lot of houses on the market. So you can get a little bit more for your house this month than you could have gotten last month. Not enough. I think it's kind of in the margins. And the mortgage market's getting a tiny, tiny bit better. We'll take what we can get at this point because it's all gloom and doom in most places. Now, the one thing I wanted to get into a lot today is the Cal HFA equity program, the equity share program. It was called I say was because the program's already done. It was called the Dream for All program. We talked about it last week. We got a lot of response to it. So rather than going through individual listeners' questions that came in on the website and a few of the cell phone calls, let's just go over all of them at once dealing with this program. It is a fantastic program. It is an equity share program. The way it works is the state would give you 20% down. You use that to 80% loan, 20% down from the state. It just sits there as essentially a silent second. You don't make payments on it. It has no interest rate attached to it. The amount just sits. When you sell the house, you pay the amount back plus a percentage of your equity. In most cases, it would be 20%. So this is a fantastic way to get people into houses. And so fantastic that the state of California had $300 million allocated to the program, and all $300 million was spent inside of a week. And the lesson there, and I'm sure Sam's going to want to talk about this as well, the lesson there is you've got to plan. There's that old joke in real estate. What's the most important thing in buying a house? Location, location, location. Well, that same joke applies to mortgage lending. Plan, plan, plan. Planning is everything. I guarantee you there is not a person in the state of California who just got up on a Monday morning and thought, today I'll buy a house, and by that Friday they managed to get themselves into the California Dream Program. I promise you that did not happen. There are too many hoops to jump through to qualify for it. And if you weren't qualified for it, you didn't get the program. So I would wager to bet that every single program, every single person, all 2,500 people who had access to that program, because it is a great program, were probably in process prior to that program being released. They were probably in process. They were probably already working with a lender. They were probably already approved for a different program, maybe a different Cal HFA program, when that program became released, and they jumped on it. And again, the window for that was a week. It was a program they announced. 2 days later, it was running, and 5 days after that, it was done. All the money was out of it. We're going to talk to Sam a little bit when he comes on about how Cal HFA handles that and some other alternatives for that, because there are a lot of programs out there, not exactly like this one, although this one we're hoping will come back next year, We'll do some lobbying for that, see if we can't get the state's attention, because it is a great program. Not that they're going to need me to tell them that, but we will. But there are a lot of other programs out there that when we get Sam on after our first break, we're going to talk about, because there are alternatives. There are a lot of good zero down and low down mortgage programs out there, because the industry is starting to react to the spike in the interest rates, which makes housing much less affordable, much harder to get into. And if the housing market stops, the entire economy crumbles. So the lenders have reacted to that. We're going to talk about that a little bit when Sam comes on, which is good. So not much of a market update this week. That's kind of all there is to note on that. But I did want to talk about my favorite topic, one of my favorite topics on the show, the bad bank of the week, PHH. I don't know, between PHH and well, who's the other guy we were talking about? I can't remember. Between those two banks, it seems like they're cornering the market on bad bank of the week, because PHH has now been on 3 times in the last 6 weeks. 3 different files too, which is just amazing. I don't know what it is with PHH. I don't know if they just enjoy incompetence, they don't train their people well. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but when I tell you this story, you're going to see why they won the bad bank of the week, because it is astonishing. We have a client we've represented since late 2018. He's a very nice guy. He's a plumber. Works locally. Well, he makes decent income, well employed. His wife, I think, is a nurse, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very nice people. And all they want is the loan modification that they were offered in 2018. That's all they want. Even the interest rates were lower. They were still, give us a higher interest rate. We'll still take that. PHH couldn't get it together. In the last 6 months, we have submitted to a file that was already approved, supposedly. We've had to submit his application 6 separate times. 6 times we've had to submit the same application. And what happens every single time is PHH cancels the file. I would say because of lack of communication. They say it's because we refuse to provide them documents. Here's some of the insanity of this. This is just recently. On March 28th, they closed the file because they said that there was a document that they requested and did not get, which was curious because on the day before, we had called them and said, do you need anything? And they said, no. We have all this in the notes. We were very careful about that sort of thing. But there was a document they were missing. Wait till you hear what the document was. The reason for canceling the file and putting this house back into foreclosure, by the way, so these are pretty big stakes we're playing for. This family would like to keep their home. Anyway, PHH canceled the file, which, by the way, they didn't tell us about until 10 days later. But they canceled the file because they needed the client to circle a line on his bank statement that was income. They had the bank statement. They had the income number. They can see the income on the bank statement. The rep said, oh, I can see it's right here. It's the 5th line down. Here it is. So, but apparently our client has to circle it because there's something magic about him circling this number. And if he does not circle the number, which again, we didn't know he needed to do till 8 days after they closed the file, then they're going to deny it for lack of documentation. This is insane. I mean, this is completely crazy. What the game is with PHH is they will tell you, we have all your documents, your file is under review. And we'll say, great, sounds good, sounds like we're making progress. And by the way, that's important because under Cal HFA and under the RESPA guidelines, if you're in danger of foreclosure and you have a complete loan modification into the bank, complete is the key word here. If you have a complete loan mod in, they are prohibited from advancing the foreclosure process. And so that gives you an opportunity to get these things worked out. It buys you time, and it gives the bank an opportunity to get them worked out. That's why the law exists, and it's good for both parties. But PHH, what they've decided to do is say, we've got a complete application, and then they come back and say, oh, wait, we have to update the application because we've taken so long to process anything that now we need updated this and updated that. And what they'll often do is not give you a complete list of what you need to update, and then they will close the file claiming you didn't give them the proper documentation. That's insane. I have no idea what PHH's numbers are for success in their asset loss division, but I doubt they're laudable. They're pretty awful. This is what I've seen again. This is 6 different files that we've had with PHH that have all in the 6 weeks, 7 weeks I've been doing the show here that have given us reason to call them the bad bank of the week. I don't know what it is. I know there are 33 attorney generals from 33 states in the country here who've gone after PHH. They filed suit in 2018 and 19 because of this kind of nonsense. And I'm here to tell you, PHH has not cleaned up their act. I don't know. If I worked for PHH, I'd lie. I'd say I worked someplace else. I don't know. I'd tell them I was an assistant crack whore or something. It's got to be better than working at PHH. I'll probably get in trouble for that comment, but this is what I think of PHH. They're horrible. PHH's incompetence is costing people their homes for no reason at all. So I don't know if you work at PHH, if you work at asset loss, you'd be proud of that. I wouldn't. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely horrible. And PHH's incompetence is such that because they make such damage out of these files, that often people who could otherwise refinance to get away from PHH now can't. And again, PHH is just a servicer. This isn't their money. So what they figured out is how to monetize incompetence. Because what happens is, if you're the investor, let's look at it from the other side. If you're the investor and you hold the mortgage note and you go to PHH to service it, what happens is the more complicated the file, the more problems on the file, the more work that needs to get done on the file, the more things that PHH can charge their investors for. They have contracts, and they say if we do X, you pay us Y. So the more damaged the file is for a servicer, in general, the more the servicer makes. So they have an incentive to damage the file. So what happens is you submit everything, you think you're done, they tell you you're done, you think you're in good shape, just waiting for a response, you know you're inside all the numbers, you should get this, you qualify for it should be fine, and instead they come back with, we don't have a complete file, so you're back in foreclosure, we close the file. Can you imagine what that has been like for this family for the last 4 or 5 years now? 5 solid years of, sorry, we have to close the file? Oh, almost there. We told you had everything, but whoops, just kidding. I mean, it's like Charlie Brown and the football from the Peanuts. Only this is, if Charlie Brown doesn't get the football, the family loses their house. So these are pretty decent stakes that we're playing for here. And I'm completely aghast at their behavior. My hope is, by calling attention to this, and we will, of course, take the video from the show here, and we'll send it to the good people at PHH, probably edit out the nasty things I said about working there. But anyway, we'll send it to them because their behavior is just unconscionable. They may be, at this point, in my view, the worst bank, the worst servicer in the country. And that's saying something, because we deal with all of them, and there are problems with all of them of one sort or another, but they are seemingly by far the worst. And it seems that that's kind of their corporate mode of operation. We had a call with them about 6-7 months ago. We spoke to a senior manager who said, I wrote this down because I don't want to get it wrong, and this is his exact quote, here at PHH, one of our goals is to be difficult to deal with. He didn't say difficult, I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to speak corporate speak. Difficult to deal with. In other words, they want to be so hard to deal with that you would do anything, but not have to deal with them. So if they say you owe them 10 grand, fine the 10 grand. Don't deal with them, just pay them. That's their attitude, which is sort of like the mob. I mean, that's sort of like somebody coming by and telling you that your storefront looks flammable and you ought to pay them insurance. That's what PHH does. If you have PHH as a servicer and you have a problem, you are in trouble. And that's true with most of these banks, but it's much more true with PHH. They're absolutely horrible. And for putting this family through all of this aggravation and all of this pain and all of this stress for the last 5 years running, PHH gets our Bad Bank of the Week this week. We're having a little awards made. We're going to send it to them. I wonder what they'll think about that. We'll get pictures and stuff, show you guys. But PHH is for sure the Bad Bank of the Week. They're bucking for Bad Bank of the Year. Absolutely amazing. So that's the good people at PHH. We have a little bit of time before we go to our next segment. So let's talk about some economic indicators. I love economic indicators because it is not hard, in most cases, to figure out which way the real estate market is going. With friends of mine who are in the stock market, it changes from minute to minute. Real estate is not like that. Real estate is sort of like a train running down the track. It's either gaining momentum or losing momentum. You don't really measure real estate in minute to minute or even day to day or even week to week. It's typically month to month that you look at real estate numbers. So let's talk about one of the indicators I like to watch, which is vacation homes. There was just a report put out earlier in the week that vacation home sales are down 50% from pre-pandemic levels. Now, granted, they were elevated a little bit during the pandemic, but 50% is a lot. That was, at one point, that was the hottest segment of the pandemic housing market, and now it's gone completely cold. Same thing is true with refinances. Those have also fallen off a cliff. And all this is the same thing. It's attached to the interest rate. It's very simple. I say this every week. The higher the interest rate, the lower the housing prices are going to go. The lower the interest rate, the higher the housing prices are going to go. The interest rate drives the market. Secondary figure is consumer confidence. And the CPI, which really tells you a lot about consumer confidence, just came out this Wednesday, and it's unchanged. It's 0.01% higher, which is good. Tiny bit, but it's essentially unchanged. So anyway, let's talk about vacation homes a little bit. Existing home sales in counties with at least 20% share of vacation homes rose by 24% on average in 2020. But more than doubled, which is more than double the 11% increase in counties that don't have a large volume of vacation homes, according to NAR. So vacation home sales rose nearly 17% in 2020, and by 33% year over year during 2021. So it's been up dramatically. According to a chief economist at Redfin, there's been a huge reversal because of high interest rates, exactly what we're talking about, and also because of the general economy. People are worried about recession and during a recession, and the first thing that tends to get cut are more frivolous items like second homes. I'd like to have that kind of frivolity in my life that I could say I bought a second home frivolously. I don't think most people could do that. But his point is well taken that, people aren't buying second homes right now because they're worried about the economy. Even people with the money to do it aren't buying second homes right now because of the economy. And that is a good indicator of where the economy is going. And if I hear one more person tell me how we might head into a recession or a recession is possible, I'm going to pull out what little gray hair I have left because the recession's already here. We're already in it. Prices are up like crazy. The inflation has gone absolutely insane. It doesn't show much of a sign of cooling, despite the fact that the Fed has gone absolutely insane with the interest rate. I mean, again, a year ago, you could have a mortgage payment at $2,000 that now is going to be over $3,000. If you had a mortgage payment a year ago that was $4,000, now it's going to be over $5,500 for the same house under the same circumstances. The average single-family home mortgage is up about 25% in payment from what they could have gotten a year ago, from the interest rate a year ago at roughly 4.5% versus the roughly 6.5% it's at now. So it's a mess, and it's only going to get worse. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but I tell you, I am right a lot more than I am wrong. And it turns out if you follow my advice on these sort of things, you'll usually do pretty good. One last thing about second home. Second home demand is down from a year ago just because of the spiking in the interest rate. The mortgage rate locks for second homes, and this is important, people who get in there and they lock a mortgage rate because they're shopping for a home, is down 49%. So we're down 50% as far as sales, 49%. So that means there's only 1% of those people in the differential that are looking. So what that tells you is not only is that market down, but it's going to stay down because people aren't looking for them. I mean, I don't know that I got a lot of listeners out there who are vacation home buyers, but this is just yet another of the indicators that the economy is not healthy. And with all due respect to the White House, who had comments about this earlier, they seem to think that we're going to have a soft landing, and I really hope that's the case. I pray for sunshine, but I plan for rain. And I think if you're wise, you'll do the same, especially when it comes to your real estate. Because with all due respect to the economic forecast coming out of the White House, the economic forecast from S&P, the economic forecast from Moody's, the economic forecast from everybody who doesn't have, let's say, a stake in making this sound good, is we're going to have a problem, and it's going to get worse. Now, I don't think it's going to be as bad as I once did. I thought we would lose 20% from the absolute high of April of last year before this is done, but it looks like now we're going to lose about 15%. We've already lost about 10. So if you had an $800,000 house in April of 2022, that house right now is worth about $720,000, excuse me. That's just the reality. We've lost 10%. That person has lost 80 grand. Now they're down to 720. And they're going to lose another 5% by the time this is over, probably by the end of this year or the beginning of next. And all that has to do with the interest rate and consumer confidence. So we combat those things because we give away money. If you're looking to buy a house, we will give you money to buy a house. It is just that simple. If you're a renter, we will give you money to buy a house. If you're selling a house, we will give you money to fix it up and sell it. We invest in our clients. We invest in the real estate market because it's better for us and it's better for clients. And there are reasons for all of that. By giving people money to buy a house, we sell more houses. By giving people money to fix up their houses, they sell for more money and they sell quicker, and we get more clientele out of it. So everybody kind of wins. We cut our profit margins on my side of the fence, and we wind up doing more business as a result. It's a pay it forward sort of a business model. It's not, brain surgery. It's just kind of the way these things work. It's just rare because so few people actually do that. Giving something now to get something later is not the way most businesses work. But I'm very fortunate that I have a business model that does do that and allows us to do that. And so we make the most of it. So if you are buying a house, if you are selling a house, if you have real estate questions, I will be happy to fix your problems. Whatever your real estate needs, scratch, itch, whatever it is, please give me a call. You can reach me anytime. You can send me an email at thefixwithrich@gmail.com through the show here. Doesn't mean we'll talk about it on the air. If you don't want us to, you don't have to. That's fine. I get people sometimes who say, yeah, I want this answer, but please don't mention it on the air. Happy to do that. Happy to answer questions that way as well. And I answer every single email we get. I usually get them answered in about 48 hours, sometimes 24 if I'm working hard. Or you can always call me. Just call my cell phone. I'll give that number out again, 661-714-1400. Even if it's just the simplest of questions like, hey, what are condos over there selling for now? Totally fine. Call me, text me, whatever you'd like to do. Use that cell phone number to your delight. You can call me anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, I will say, if you feel the need to call me at 2 o'clock in the morning, please go right ahead. As I said, 24 hours a day. Just keep in mind the quality of advice I can give you at 2 o'clock in the morning is going to be in direct proportion to the amount of sleep I'm losing. So please keep that in mind. But otherwise, call or text me anytime. I'm happy to help you out. So we're going to have Sam on here in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break to pay some bills and get some ads running for us. We'll have Sam with the Mortgage Hub on with us. We're going to talk about some of the great low-down and no-down mortgage programs to get you guys into houses, because I think everybody should own, and our ownership ratios in this state are ridiculous. We were just talking about this before we got on there. 44% of everybody in California is a renter. It's one of the highest, I think it is the highest in the country. 44% of every household is renting. That's a problem we got to fix. So we're going to talk about that with Sam when we come back. Please enjoy the commercials. Come back with us. We'll be back in a few minutes. I'm Rich with the Real Estate Fix on your hometown station, KHTS. Hi there. This is Rich with the Real Estate Fix on your hometown station, KHTS, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. Welcome back. Thank you guys for joining us. Those of you who hung through the commercial, we appreciate it. As promised, we have Sam Chong from the Mortgage Hub, sponsor of the show, friend of the show, and the best lender I know. Best at solving these problems, best rates, best everything as far as I'm concerned. And that's a fairly educated opinion, I like to think, after 31 some odd years of doing this, almost 32. But anyway, we want to talk about today, and welcome, Sam. Welcome to the show. You there?
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having me on again.
There we are. I wanted to make sure we had you. It's always a little dicey with a call, and I'm always a little worried. Well, I'm always worried when people are here anyway. I'm just worried in general. Anyway, we want to talk about, you and I were talking about quite a bit during the week, the Cal HFA program, the Dream for All program, which was fantastic. So fantastic, in fact, it lasted for less than a week. And, no complaint. Glad the state's doing it. Happy to have the access. But the only people we managed to get into that program were people who were already in process. Because if you weren't already in process, you missed the boat. So I wanted to talk.
The ones that planned ahead.
Exactly. So what we've been talking about. So I wanted to talk about some of the zero down and low money down programs that are sort of replacements for or adjuncts to that kind of program. So what do you got for the people?
So thanks, Cal HFA. They've been obviously around for a while, and they have some really good programs, and their base programs that they've always had are still around. And I think the great thing about it is that it helps the buyer with the down payment, which is a deferred second down payment assistance program, and on top of that, they also have a closing cost assistance program that gives you up to 3% of the purchase price for closing costs, and that's also a deferred second.
Explain to the listeners what does deferred mean? That's going to be important.
Deferred means that you're not making any payments on that loan. So it's going to be deferred until you sell the house and refinance it down the road.
So much like the other Cal HFA program, they'll give you the down payment, and it just sits there as a second. You don't have to make payments on it. It's just deferred, meaning you don't have to make payments. It just sits there until you sell the house or refinance or do something else. So it's straight up down payment assistance. It's just without the equity share component.
It is without the equity share component, correct.
So you can do that with both your down payment and your closing costs?
And your closing costs. Now, because of I would still suggest the buyer have at least 1 or 2% of their own funds available, because we talked about this a little bit last time.
Yep.
The cost of these programs are a little bit higher, and the rates are a little bit higher. So that means that you typically would need to have another 1 to 2% of your own funds in most cases.
Every buyer is better off using their own money. The problem is a lot of them don't have their own money. So that's why these programs exist, so they can still get into houses. Now, one of the solutions to that is the program that you and I work on, that we have in-house, that's unique to us. That is the rental rebate program. And with the rental rebate program, if you're a tenant, we can give you 10% of the rent you've already paid back to buy a house. And it's real cash. You can use it any way you want. I've had people buy bathtubs with it. Most people use it for closing costs or that sort of thing. But it is real money. It's 10% of the rent you've previously paid. So if you're renting right now, and you're paying $3,000 a month, which is $36,000 a year, that's after 2 years, that's $7,200 we can give you, which will help pay a lot of your closing costs. That's not chump change. It's $7,200 if you've been renting for 2 years, even more if you've been there for.
In most cases, that covers the gap that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So here we have an opportunity, which very much like the program we were talking about last week, which got a lot of response to, obviously. You have an opportunity, if you're a buyer, to buy a house in Southern California with no money down. And the state assistance isn't the easiest thing to qualify for, but it's not nearly as hard as a lot of other things, and it's not that much more difficult than most loans. Am I right when I say that, Sam?
Yeah, no, you're completely correct. I mean, they're a little bit tighter on some of the markers, like the debt-to-income ratios have a little bit some restrictions on there. But it's definitely, and I would say that if you're going past those debt-to-income ratio limits on a traditional program, I think you're probably overextending yourself anyway. So You're definitely more than reasonable.
Exactly, which brings us a good segue to your favorite 3 words to tell every client who's talking about getting a loan, and those 3 are plan, plan, plan. because people who planned ahead or who were in process, when a program pops up like this, like the Dream for All is there, they can take advantage of it. But if you aren't planning and you're not getting into it, if you don't get moving, it's not going to happen. You do not buy a house like you buy a carton of milk or even like you buy a car. You can't wake up on a Tuesday and go out and buy a house on Wednesday. It just doesn't work like that. Unless you have the cash, I suppose, and even then probably be a little more careful with it. You have got to get pre-qualified. You have got to get the ball rolling, and you've got to do it yourself. A good lender like Sam can help you out. He can walk you through it. He can get it all set up for you. He's got a great website, makes it easy. He's got a fantastic staff to work with, so they will carry most of the water for you. But he can't make you give him your tax returns. You got to get those together. You got to get together your payments, your pay stubs, and all that other stuff in order to qualify. So it's plan. Those who plan succeed. Those who don't. That's
and Rich, one of the big things that I've seen over the years that people are hesitant of when it comes to planning, because you're right. We plan better and most other things we do in life, except for when it comes down to a mortgage. And I think one of the turns there is, how it's going to affect their credit. So one thing to make very, very clear, most lenders, if you don't want to use me or any other lender out there, have the ability to run what they call a soft pull on the credit. So it's going to give them all the information they need about your credit, what debt you have on there, your scores, what the potential improvement points are on the individual credit report. But it's not going to put a hard pull or a ding on your credit. So that's something that I think people should really know about this. And that should, if people realize this piece, that should bring down the hesitancy of trying to plan ahead and get pre-qualified. Because in a lot of cases, these things can take, if you're looking at 6, 9, 12 months ahead, you can do a lot of good for setting yourself up for the right mortgage in order for you to be able to borrow smart, but also repay the mortgage smart and have a plan together.
Yeah, well, it's not just an entry plan. You want an exit plan as well. But the point here is it costs nothing. You can get pre-qualified for free. I don't know why somebody would call somebody other than Sam because he's fantastic, but whatever. It should be free. There should be no cost to get a pre-qual. And with a soft pull on your credit, that means there's no damage to your credit. So you are none the worse for wear, except you've learned an awful lot, and you put yourself in a position to buy a house. I don't understand why anyone who is renting wouldn't at least start this process. If you can hear what I'm saying and you're renting and you think, I will never own a house, I shouldn't bother, or I'm too busy, or whatever your excuse is, shelve your excuse. Just shelve it. It's no longer relevant. Whatever your situation is, there is a solution to it, I promise. Where there is a will, there is a way. And that's this sort of our standard operating procedure here. Where there is a will, there is a way. And if you are renting, you should do this. Give me a call. Give Sam a call. We'll see about getting you pre-qualified. Sam will get you pre-qualified. I'll get you over there. And we'll get you in. Maybe it takes a year for you to buy a house. Maybe it takes 2. We have somebody we just put in escrow recently. We've been working with them for the better part of 4 years. Now, there's a lot that went into that process and divorce and a lot of other silly stuff that had to get cleared up. Credit-wise and all sorts of stuff, but it's taken us 4 years. And in that time, we put her into a rental, and now we put her into another rental, and now we're finally in a position where she is ready to go buy a house. So we're going to have her in escrow here shortly, hopefully. But yeah, plan. That is everything. I'll tell a quick story about myself as far as mortgages. Luckily for me, I know Sam, and luckily for me, Sam is in my corner with these things because I was not getting it together to get a refi done when we knew interest rates were around 3.5. I kept meaning to. I kept putting it off. Something else was always more important. I was always busy with something. And luckily for me, Sam called me up and said, I'm just doing this. I already have most of your information. Here's what I need you to update for me. Tell your wife to get it for me because he knows my wife as well. Tell her to get it for me and I'll just get it done. And thank goodness, because I got a great interest rate on my house. My payment is incredibly low because of Sam, because I listened to Sam, because I did what he told me to do, and it's worked out extremely well. And because he pestered me to do it because he needed to, because I'm just as bad as any of my clients, I tell you, and I should know better. So so thank you, Sam, by the way. I appreciate that if I've not said thank you before. But yeah, plan. What other programs are out there for him, Sam?
There's also another in-house program that we have with specifically for FHA loans, where you get a down payment assistance for the second. It's a second mortgage. Okay. It's not going to be deferred interest, so you are paying it on it from day one. But it's going to close that gap of 3.5% for the down payment. Now, for that program, you are still going to need to have your own closing costs. There's certain things that we can do, obviously with the rental rebate program or independently on our side. There's some things that we can do to help out with that the closing cost piece. But it's a great program to be able to get in there with any money down for down payment.
So here's another zero down, easy to qualify program. Are we allowed to build closing costs into a deal like that? Are we allowed to get them from the seller?
You can definitely do that. You can't build them into the deal from a financing perspective, but
Sure.
definitely, as you know, you've negotiated for many of our clients, seller paid closing costs. So that's one way to bridge that gap for the closing cost piece.
Sure. Well, everything in life is negotiable. So let's say you're an FHA buyer and this program suits you better than the Cal HFA program for whatever reason. You could, again, theoretically buy a house with zero money down, and you'd have two mortgages, and they're going to be a little bit higher typically, especially the second, I imagine. But we can also get the closing costs paid for by the seller. So yet again, we're back to no money out of pocket, and you can buy a house. And with rental rates, what they are in Southern California, in Santa Clarita in particular, our rentals are ridiculous. Let me go over just a couple of quick stats I talked about last week a little bit in Southern California here, because I'm just flabbergasted by this. The first one that gets me is 44% of all households in California are renters. 44%. So as you drive down your street, if there are 10 houses on that block, 4.5 of them are rentals. And that's crazy. We can't sustain that. It's not. I mean, you're setting up a situation where we're going to wind up with a rental society rather than an ownership society, and that's death to the middle class. We've got to wrestle. We've got to fix these things, and those programs are out there. It's not like I'm the only one who knows this stuff. The state of California, the federal government, they know this stuff as well. We have to have an ownership class in order to have a middle class. Those two things are tied hand in hand, and that's what keeps us healthy economically and strong in every other way. So that's why these programs are out there. It's not largesse. It's just because it's needed. So those of you who are renting, please, 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 please get out of the rental mindset. Renting is not going to it's not going to pay for your retirement. It's not going to get you where you need to go. Renting is good for the landlord. It's not good for the tenant in 99% of cases. I'm a landlord. I have rentals. I think I love when people rent property for me. I tend to turn most of those renters into buyers because that's how we do things. But I'm telling you, if you want to buy a house, if you've thought about buying a house, please call in. We will find a way to get it done. We will. Where there is a will, there is a way always. If you are renting a house now, that means you are making a payment. If you're making a monthly payment, we can find a way to get you into a house. There is always a way to do this. I promise. But let's go over some of these, because again, these are just absolutely staggering to me. Let's see. The average in Santa Clarita, the average apartment is now $2,500 a month in rent. The average house to rent is $3,300 a month. If you're paying $3,300 a month, that's about a $450,000 mortgage, Sam?
Yes.
Something like that. So if you're renting at $3,300 a month, you could go buy a house with no money down for $450,000. If the interest rate comes down a little bit, maybe even higher, tomorrow. I mean, we've got to get your pre-qual and all that stuff done first, as we were talking about. But yeah, why would you continue to rent, throw that kind of money out the window when you could buy a house and start building equity? And maybe you buy a condo, maybe you buy a townhouse, but get in the game. You got to get off the fence, because these aren't going to get better. They just aren't, these expenses. SCV housing expenses, the Santa Clarita Valley housing expenses here are 130% above normal. 130%. This is a very expensive area. Utility prices here, 10% above normal. Transportation, 27% above normal. Groceries, just groceries, are 11% higher here than the rest of the country, than the median for the country. The Public Policy Institute says that California has the most rental households in the country. We have 17 million renters. We have 13.6% of every single rental in the United States. 50 states, 360 million people, 13.6 of every single rental house in the United States is in California. And again, that's 44% of the households in California. And that number is going up. Not so long ago, that number was 35%. Now it's 44. Excuse me. That is terrifying. I mean, I have a daughter. I know, Sam, you have kids. I'm worried about what they're going to do, because if we don't leave generational wealth to them, I don't see how they're buying a house. And luckily, I only have one daughter, so it makes it a little bit easier for me. But still, I bought my first house on my own. I bought it FHA, paid $143,000 for it in Saugus. It was a great house 30 some odd years ago. I sold it at a profit, bought the next one. That's the idea. That's how this sort of thing works. So what other programs are out there for them, Sam? So we got FHA, they can do zero down. They got Cal HFA, they can do zero down. What if somebody has a down payment, but they don't have enough? Like they've got 2% or 3%?
Yeah, I think in every situation, even though these down payment assistance programs are great, right? But I think kind of going back to your plan. We've been talking, we always talk about this.
Yeah.
I think, if somebody has to, close to 3% or has a way to get down to 3%, I think you are going to set yourself up for the better than even the down payment assistance programs. If you're planning ahead and working with somebody like yourself, somebody like me, to be able to kind of structure a deal, even if it's, again, 6-9 months out. And the main reason for this is that the actual rates that you're going to get, if you're able to figure a way out to budget, plan ahead, and get down to the 3.5%, you're going to end up with a lower mortgage payment. So I think, yes, there are some great programs out there, and they do a lot of good. But I think if there's, in the planning stages, if we're able to put a plan together where the buyer can come up with 2 to 3% of their own funds, that's the best overall way to go about homeownership.
We can always find a way to come up with 2 to 3% for them. Where there's a will, there's a way. But it comes back to the same thing. Plan. I want to touch on one more thing here before I let you go. When you call me up, when you call Sam up, it's not just Sam and I, which I think would be a lot because we're very good at this, but it's not just Sam and I. You get a whole team. I mean, you've got my entire office. You've got Sam's entire office. There are all sorts of people, and everybody works on this stuff because we all have the same goal. We want to see you get into a house. We don't not just get in. We want to see you get in under the best circumstances possible. Because here's the secret, and I will share this. I share this every time I talk to anybody about this sort of thing. And I'm sure I don't want to speak for Sam, but I'm sure you'll agree with me. The secret to succeeding in my position and in Sam's position is doing such a good job for a client the first time that they not only come back, but they tell all their friends and relatives. And that's it. I mean, it's not brain surgery. The more you give, the more you get. It's not a revolutionary business idea. It's just, a lot of people don't do it that way these days. We live and die on referrals. And so it's very, very important that the first deal you come in for, that we do a great job. And I will say, without fear of contradiction, there are people who have houses now, who are living in houses, who are making money with equity, who are financially solid, who were not when we first met them, but are there now because of Sam's work and because of my work. And it's free. It literally costs you nothing to find out. It costs you nothing to find out what you have to do to get a loan. It costs you nothing to find out what that loan might look like. It costs you nothing to find out what's in the market. It costs you nothing to go have a look. Nothing. It doesn't damage your credit in any way, shape, or form, as we discussed, and it's free. I don't understand how people aren't doing this. I was very fortunate in that my mom made me buy my first house at 18. I'll tell that story when we come back maybe, but I did not want to do it. I was like most 18-year-old kids. I wanted to buy a Corvette. I did not want to buy a house. She made me do it. And as a result of my mom making me, I have a couple of houses now. I'm doing pretty well. And I got into real estate to such a degree for so long that I even got a call one day and said, hey, how'd you like to be on the radio? So yeah, you got to get into it. There's no reason you can't. So any final thoughts you want people to know before we wrap up the segment, Sam?
Pretty much, if, I think you've talked about it a lot, and you share your cell phone. I think, we're always available. If you need to reach me to go over any scenario, you can reach me. Let me give you my phone number. It's my cell. You can text me, call me. It's 562-484-1907. Again, 562-484-1907. We spend a lot of time talking to first-time home buyers. We do weekly sessions with them and really build a plan for them to help them to achieve that dream of home ownership.
All it takes is that call. You make that one call, and you're on the road. And again, it costs you nothing. We'll do all the work. That's the job. That's the job of a realtor. That's the job of a lender. We're happy to do it for you. And I wasn't going to give out your cell phone, Sam. I wasn't sure you wanted me to do that. I thought I was the only one who got my personal cell phone number you can call. So call either one of us. We'll see to it that the station has the number posted as well. You can also get there through the website here at the station. Or just call. We want to help you. We want to see you get into a house. 44% rental rate is just way too high. That's just way too high. And I'm on a mission, and I know Sam shares with me to change that. You got to because if you don't start getting into it now, by the time you get to my age, I'm 51, about to be 50. Actually, I'll be 52 next week. It's too late. It's too late to make any to build any serious generational wealth with real estate at that point. I shouldn't say that. It's just much, much harder. The odds are stacked against you. But if you do this in your 20s or even in your 30s, easy. but you got to get into it. You got to decide this is what you want to do, and you got to decide this is where you're going to go. We will get you there. I promise. I absolutely promise this can be done. So maybe we come back, I'll tell a story about how I got into real estate. Everybody seems to like the little story, so we'll do that. But I wanted to thank you, Sam, for calling in today. I wanted to thank you for sharing information. And I will say this yet again, and I've probably said this 30 times today. Please get into the game. If you can hear my voice, if you're renting a property, call. We will find a way to get it done. Where there's a will, there is a way in all things. So let's go to our next break. We'll again pay some more bills, listen to some more commercials. When we come back, I don't know, we'll have some fun with some banks, or I'll tell a story about how I got my first house. And thank you, Sam, for calling in. As always, a wealth of information. Fantastic. Those of you who need mortgages, if you're looking to do a refinance or anything else, maybe you're a second or third time buyer, or maybe you're one of those people who actually wants to still buy a vacation home despite the vacation home market being depressed. Sam is your guy for all things financing. He is fantastic. I've used him for years with clients. I use him personally. I cannot say enough good things about Sam and his group at the Mortgage Hub. They're absolutely wonderful. And I know they're wonderful because you guys, how many states are you guys in now? Your company's grown like crazy in the time I've known you.
We're about in 5 states only right now, but we're continuously trying to increase that number as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a short time I've known you. I've seen the company get much, much larger, and that's just a credit to your good work. So thank you again for all of that. Thank you for calling in. We're going to go to our next break, and when we come back, I don't know, we'll tell some stories. But I'm Rich Szerman with the Real Estate Fix on your hometown station, KHTS. Hi there, this is Rich Szerman. This is the Fix with Rich on your hometown station, KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220. We've got a few minutes left in the show here. As usual, I have more show than we have time. But I did want to tell you guys, I promised I'd tell you the story. I'll tell you the story. Here's how I bought my first house. And this is why I'm so crazy about trying to get people into their first house, because it is, if you get into this early, if you they always say the same thing, buy real estate when you're young. If you get into this early, it will work for you. It will launch you into all sorts of great things. So here's my story. I was in college and I wanted nothing whatsoever to do with real estate. And my mom, I kind of was working in it part-time, and my mom made me buy a house. This is how the story goes. I had gotten into real estate. I'd made some money very quickly. I did very well very early on. I guess I have an aptitude for it. But so I did very well. I had a lot of money in the bank, and that would seem like a lot of money in those days. When I was 19, 20 years old. I told my mom how much money I had, and I wanted to go buy a 67 Corvette. I'd found a 67 Corvette in Sacramento, and I wanted to go buy the thing. Thought it was the greatest thing in the whole wide world. I like Corvettes. And my mom said, well, if you have that kind of money together, why don't you go buy something that makes you money, like a house? And I said, you suck. You don't know me. Cut me some slack. I was 20 years old, 19 years old. I said, you suck. You don't know me. I can do whatever I want. And my mom's response very logically was, well, yeah, you called me. It's your money. Do what you want. I didn't call you. And I said, yeah. And I hung up the phone. And I called my dad because my parents are divorced. And anytime my mom says anything, my dad disagrees. So I called my dad and I said, I got this money together and I want to go buy this car. And Dad was a car guy and I thought he'd be into that. And he said, well, geez, son, if you have that kind of money together, why don't you buy something that makes money, like a house? And I said, it's my ace in the hole. I said, Mom said the same thing. And my dad completely uncharacteristically said, I think your mom is right. I almost had a heart attack. My dad's never, in my life, I can think of 3 times my dad agreed with my mom. This was one of them. Anyway, so I didn't want to buy a house. So I went to my then girlfriend, who is now my wife, and I said, honey, I've got this money together. I want to go buy this car. And won't that be great? And she said, why would you do that? If you have that kind of money together, go buy something that makes money, like a house. So I had to call my mom back and say, anyway, to make a very, very long story short, my mom guilted me into buying my first house. I bought a townhouse in the Los Robles tract up on Soledad Canyon. I paid $78,000 for it. That'll tell you how long ago it was. And when I got out of school, the gal who was renting it from me wanted to buy it. So I sold it to her. So when most of my friends were graduating and going to live in their parents' basements, I got to go buy a house because I had the proceeds from my townhouse, which, again, my mom made me buy. So thank you, Mom, if you're listening. But, so you've got to get into this stuff. If you do this, if you get into it, we can get you into a house for nothing. If you can make the payment you're renting now, then you can actually make a lot of money doing this, but you've got to get into it. I feel like I'm begging now, but I'll do that. I'll beg for other people's well-being. You've got to get into it. If you are renting now, please, even if you're not, but if you were renting especially, please give me a call. I'm going to give out my home phone number, my cell phone, sorry, not home, personal cell phone number, 661-714-1400, 661-714-1400. If you call me at that number, I will find a way to get you into a house. Where there's a will, there's a way in all things. And I want you guys to be aware of that. That's my time. That's been the show. It's been fantastic. Thank you guys for listening.